Yeah, hi everybody. It's still Thursday afternoon, the 27th, so we're still on the 27th. I have to post another little snip because the papers are just unbelievable. They're packed today with all this NAMA debate and argument that's been going on since yesterday, since these 46 men out of 250. The previous snip we dealt with, Professor Lucy from Trinity College in Dublin sent out a letter asking for support, putting up an alternative to NAMA. He sent it out to 250 of his colleagues and he got 46 replies. So we know what that profession thinks about our country. Anyway, the bottom line about it is, out of this, Brian Lenihan's main acolyte, this man, Dr. Alan Ahern, who again we spoke about in the previous snip, he is the main defender, the main intellectual defender of the NAMA project, and he's been chosen because he comes from the Federal Reserve. He spent 5 years at the epicenter of the Federal Reserve in Washington DC. The Federal Reserve being a consortium of private banks, a lot of French, English and American banks, who basically loan money to the American people to run their government and their country. That's essentially what they do. It's a completely secret organisation. Congress or the Senate, the American Senate, know nothing about it. Everything it does is behind closed doors. It has more power than more. It is effectively a government within a government. Now, all of a sudden, this man, Alan Ahern, who's an Irish citizen, comes home here in 2005, gets a job as an economics lecturer down in Galway University, and now all of a sudden, when the shit hits the fan, and we're in serious diffos, the NAMA project is suddenly put into place, and he appears out of nowhere as Brian Lenihan's main man. Anyway, as I said in the previous snip, it seems very suspicious to me, but I know what hymn sheet he is singing off. Anyway, today's Irish Times, an article called "Advisor Criticises NAMA Guess," and what Dr. Ahern says is that NAMA must follow EU guidelines because that's where they're getting the money from. Okay, the bulk of the money will come from the EU Central Bank. And what will happen is it must follow EU guidelines. Each loan will be valued separately. Each of the NAMA loans will be valued separately. The idea that someone sitting in an ivory tower with no information can come up with a number is ludicrous. In other words, putting the correct value on these toxic liabilities, as I call them, is at the key to the whole NAMA thing. This is what he says now. This is Mr. Ahern, or Dr. Ahern speaking. All right. He said loans worth 90 billion, the amount of loans NAMA is expected to take on, would have purchased property worth 120 billion. Even assuming a 50% fall off in property value since the peak of the market, it would bring a value of loans to 60 billion rather than the 30 billion suggested in the article by the 46 economists, he said on RTE's Morning Ireland. Now, if you asked me whether or not one man with clearly vested interests in promoting the NAMA project and 46 men, 10 of who are professors in economics and have no vested interest in it whatsoever, good, bad or indifferent, most of them are academics, who would I believe? I'm going to believe the 46 men. Alright? But there is an alternative to all this. And the alternative is very simple. All we have to do is test the market. You know, this wonderful capitalist market, you know, this market that all these academic and professional and media economists told us there should be no interference with, that it always finds its own level and it's a sacrosanct, it's almost like a bloody sacrament. Well, why don't we test it? Why don't we test it now? Why doesn't the government, instead of borrowing 90 billion from the EU, from the European Central Bank, or wherever it's going to get the bulk of the money, why doesn't it just borrow a small amount of money, 4 or 5 billion, and buy up a broad spectrum of these toxic liabilities? Residential liabilities, residential property, commercial property, and developmental property, you know, a blank property with nothing built on it. Why don't we do that? Buy it up off the banks, give them 5 billion and buy it, and buy a big broad cross section of it. Buy the best stuff, the middle type of stuff, and the worst stuff. A big spread of a portfolio, and then offer it to the market and see what happens. And that'll tell us what the value is of everything. And we all know what would happen, don't we? We do. Nothing would happen. The bubble is burst. The cat is out of the bag. On most of those so-called toxic assets, which I call toxic liabilities, if they got a return of a third, 25%, 33.33%, they'd be doing very well. And they know that. And that is why the good and the mighty and all those involved in this property Ponzi scheme, that's all it was. That's why those who still have a vested interest in it are transferring their indebtedness to us, the Joes, the punters, the citizens of the Republic. And we, our children and our grandchildren, will be picking up this indebtedness for the next 50 to 100 years. Please believe me. Anyway, we should talk more about this. Thank you very much.